So I'm
What
excited to
is
talk.
this word community that you're speaking of? I have never heard of this word.
Well, maybe you should, because we know that those who get engaged with community live longer, healthier, happier lives.
You mean
And
watch the TV show Community?
I don't even know what that is. There's a TV show called
There's a
Community.
show called Community, I believe. Well, let's see. Maybe I'm confusing it with the show Parks and Recs, but I think there was a show called Community that was popular a few years back.
Oh, okay.
But
Well,
we're
I'll
talking
have to.
about
Oh,
specific.
there was.
Yes.
I remember there was it was actually pretty funny. It only lasted a couple seasons. You're right about that.
Hmm.
And who was it that was in it? Was Ted Danson in that?
I don't remember. I'll have to figure that out.
I'll have to figure that out too.
If anyone can tell us
Yeah, let us know.
live, let us know who was on Community
Yeah, that was a
because
good show. I wish
because
they'd bring it back.
I thought we were talking about that specifically, but you're talking about some other community, right?
A whole lot of different kinds of community. Most people are involved in community in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in the sports that you do, maybe you belong to a gym and you go regularly and you have a community of fellow people who work out with you. Maybe you're on a sports team. Maybe it's a house of worship. Maybe it is joining a local organization like the Rotary Club. Maybe it's um, that you have some kind of circle of friends. Maybe you play mahjong or cards of some sort. People are engaged in community in a lot of different ways, and a lot of it is neighborly. People do block parties or, watch parties for sporting events, all kinds of things that are community related. Often don't really think about it or think of it's very important, but it's when we lose community that we realize how troublesome that is, that we don't have it.
So it's basically a group of people that spend time with each other or connected with each other in some type of way.
Yeah. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be, something that you're doing all the time. It doesn't have to be structured. It can be something that is loosely, structured, something that you even know that you have it there all the time. Where if you wanted to go to do the sports and you could call upon people to do these events with. Some people, it's community is having dinner regularly with people, things like that. So it doesn't have to be a structured thing that you're doing all the time, but community is something that you feel it's like a family, they're there, even if they're not there all the time.
It can be even structured around like some type of joint interest or something that you like together, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. If art, fishing, I
Hmm.
mean, you name it, really. Yeah, hot dogs. Absolutely.
Hmm.
You say that, and it's funny because I had a group of people for years that we went out to dinner. We found all of the core theme of the dinner for this group was that we had to have it had to have meat.
Hmm.
So we went all over the city looking for restaurants that had the best meat dishes. And so you can build your community around anything you want.
Absolutely. So I think you mentioned the benefits, right, of community. What are some of those benefits?
So when you feel like you have community, it's a stress reducer, it makes you feel safe. There are a lot of emotional things that really help when you have community. You feel like if there's a problem, you have somebody you can call upon. And that's not something you think about all the time, but it's there in the back of your mind. So those are the great emotional benefits. The physical benefits are that when your cortisol levels are down because you're not stressed and because you're feeling connected and all that nice oxytocin is pumping through your body because you're feeling like the care from others and towards us others, that helps you physically in the long run as well. So those are some of the benefits that we get from community, which is something we tend to enjoy.
Mhm. And I suppose you don't feel quite as alone, too, right? Because we know that loneliness has been a problem that's been rising since the 1980s. So if
Mhm.
you look at a lot of the surveys, uh, where people are asked, do you feel alone? Do you have friends? Do you feel like there's a bunch of questions that people are asked? Do you feel like there are people that you can depend on, et cetera? And all those indicators have been going on the wrong directions since the 1980s.
Yeah.
In fact, I started getting to a point where it's been called a huge health problem. So the World Health Organization declared it as a pressing health concern. The Surgeon General, I can't believe I can't remember if it was 2022 or 2023, um, actually issued a report about growing loneliness
Yeah.
and people feeling more disconnected. The United Kingdom actually appointed its first minister of loneliness.
Yeah.
I think this was in 2017, 2018, one of those years, which acknowledged the fact that this had become such a huge problem. Um, Although Minister of Loneliness is an interesting
I
title
was
because
just gonna say that. Who wants that as their title? That's a terrible title to hold.
I designate you as lonely. No, so maybe not the best title, but I think it reflected the fact that loneliness, people are feeling more disconnected. That was something
Yeah.
specifically that was in the Surgeon General's report. Um, and so and so there's been a number of trends that have actually separated people, right, since the
Mhm.
1980s. I think more and more people are spending a lot more time by themselves. Like they'll
Yeah.
get in their cars, drive in their cars, get to work. They might even be in work like throughout the day, not interacting with anyone. They might be just in their office or their cubicle, and then they get back in their car and then drive back. And then in many cases, they may not interact with their neighbors, or their neighbors may be far away. Like, houses may not be next to each other, or even if they're next to each other, they don't even know their neighbors very well.
Yeah.
Um, so those are some of the trends I think that have been leading to the opposite, kind of breaking apart
Yeah.
communities. So, um, and then there's social media now,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of people are communicating digitally, but that's not the same, right?
No, it's not at all. And that can be part of what leads to the loneliness. Some of the communities that we build online can be great, but we do need in-person communities as well.
Hmm.
That it is just not a substitute if you only have online communities.
Hmm.
So we really do have to get out in some way. And I'm so glad that you brought up the UK and the Minister of Loneliness, because the UK is also the country that started social prescribing
Hmm.
for people who are feeling lonely, and that has caught on in the US. It's in the beginning stages, but you and I both went to a conference actually on social prescribing,
Yes.
and, um, there's a real urgency to get to people who are, living in their communities and disconnected with their communities, so they're now prescribing community connections for people, which is fascinating to me that you
Hmm.
could go to your physician and get prescribed, some kind of a community, connection.
Yeah, so it's not exactly like, "Oh, here's a prescription, take 2 friends, once a day, and then, blah, blah, blah," but it's really sort of saying giving people things that they should be doing to feel more connected. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's a recognition that people are not like separate entities, that a lot of their both mental and physical health really depends on who they have around them, uh,
Yes.
right? I mean, there's been a number of studies that have shown that. Uh, you mentioned things like mental health, but also physical health, where people's physical health uh, is worse. There's a association or correlation between the number of relationships that they have, or how connected they feel, or how alone, or conversely how alone they feel, and the potential risk of different types of chronic medical conditions.
Yeah.
And I think there's there's some practical things behind that. So, like, if you feel part of a community, you have access to people talking about things, right? So then
Mhm.
you might recognize, oh wait, I probably better need to do this. I need to maybe eat better. I need to, you realize, oh, if someone had a medical problem, maybe I should check that out myself, and those things like that. So there's those practical things that you feel like
Yeah.
you can trade advice, and then also, I think if you're part of a community, assuming the community like is a healthy community, and like as opposed to maybe like a deep fried community, um, you might be also exchanging or modeling good health behaviors to each other. Like if
Yeah.
you're part of like a running club or something of that sort.
Mhm.
Uh, but then also, I think that there's this connection between the mind, because the mind matters, and the body, right? So if
Mhm.
you're feeling down or stuff like that, then it might manifest in different ways in your body.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And, some of the connections could be as simple as a post per a mail carrier. It can be somebody in your community who might see you and say, "Hey, I haven't seen this person in a while."
Mhm,
Have connections oftentimes with people like the person in the pharmacy or other places. It doesn't have to be that this is somebody or that you're talking about community where it has to be that you are doing something regularly. Even having people who just check on you and that make you feel like they are concerned about you matters. They can also say, "Hey, you don't look the same. You look like there's something that might be going on," and you might end up getting yourself checked out and find out that you averted maybe something that could have been worse, or you caught something early physically. Um, but yeah, all of those, aspects of the community are there for us to be able to look in on each other without even really nobody even thinks of that, but you might say, "Hey, how have you been? You're quieter than usual," or,
mhm.
um, "I noticed that you aren't eating as much if you're out with people." Things like that, that people might say, "Hey, I've seen this person around quite a bit. Is something going on?" And that's what community is about.
Like, you seem to be mailing a lot of letters to yourself.
Yes, exactly. You're ordering a lot from Amazon lately. Is everything okay?
Yes. So, so you're saying that there are ways that you can establish community that people may overlook, right?
Yeah.
So there's, um, that community can come in many different forms. So people might think that, oh, there's only one or a limited number of ways to actually connect with people, but, um, there there are people around you from a day-to-day standpoint, right?
Yeah, there are super easy ways. One example is I have a neighbor who actually has a snowplow and or a snowblower, and
Mhm,
he clears off everyone's driveways. In the winter. He
mhm,
doesn't have to do that, some people hire it, but that's community.
mhm,
Community is also people taking in people's mail while they go away or checking in on people if they have something going on. Their lawn is getting a little long or things like that, just noticing some of the neighborly things that are happening. So
mhm.
if you live in an apartment, how many people have ever lived in an apartment and the neighbors are the ones that you go to when you need something, not just a cup of sugar, but if you need something that they might have and you can go to them and talk to them about that. That's something that is also community, and we don't always think about it. We just see our neighbors in the stairwells or um in the elevators and we smile, but that um repeated exposure makes you feel comfortable and it makes you feel like you're part of a community also. And people do often speak up if they notice something different, even if you aren't normally having conversations all the time.
So you're basically saying that, like, if you see a snowblower person, don't write them off as a blowhard.
Exactly.
Okay.
And give them a bottle of wine or a nice gift because that's a nice thing to do. So just being neighborly, whether you live in an apartment or a home, it's a little more tricky if you're in a rural neighborhood, but get to know the neighbors next to you and see if you can offer to be helpful to them in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that is many times striking is that when you do make the first attempt at connection, it actually many times you're surprised at how the other person is like, "Oh, great," because they were afraid to make that initial
Yeah.
connection. Um, and what's the worst that could happen? They're like, "No, I'm not going to blow away your snow," and so that's the worst that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Another thing that people can do that it can take away some of that awkwardness because I understand that. That makes total sense.
Hmm.
It's not easy to put yourself out there and say, "Hey," to somebody that you haven't really had a conversation with and break that ice. But a lot of people will do things like they'll start a WhatsApp chat for their community and people can join as they want. They do things on Facebook or they do things on Instagram. They make accounts where you don't have to put yourself out there, but then you can start to get to know people and then have that in person connection as well. But that's a great community builder where, you can lurk for a bit if you want, and then you can jump in when you feel comfortable.
Hmm. So the key though is that you actually have to be ultimately an in-person type of situation, right? Because I know people who say, "Oh yeah, I have all these like um, connections, but they're all like virtual or on social media or those things like." It's not quite the same.
Yeah, I would say for sure that that is the case. And part of the reason for that is that, you really get to have a different feeling when you're in person with someone.
Hmm.
I mean, why ever have a partner? Why not just get online with people?
Hmm.
It's always better emotionally if you're in person with someone. If you're having dinner with somebody, if you're doing a nice gesture for somebody, if you're collecting somebody's mail, if you're playing pickleball with somebody, I could go on and on and on. There's a big difference between doing that virtually. It's like playing a video game versus doing it in person.
So one of the interesting, I guess, questions is, uh, so we talked about the trends, right? The fact that loneliness has been increasing and social disconnect disconnectness has been increasing. And it's been sort of a steady increase since the 1980s. There's been times where it got worse. I guess it got worse during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's not as if things have completely reversed after the pandemic.
Yeah.
Now we've got AI. So, the question is, will that even further worsen this social disconnectedness and resulting loneliness or a lack of the feeling of community?
It very well could. Um, I think that the way that I look at all of this is that we should never say we need to get rid of something. We need to embrace it, but not give up what we already have. So, use AI in your life, but don't give up your life. Use it to enhance your life. Use social media to be able to call out people and meet people you would never have been able to meet. Expand your community. AI can help you to expand your community too. It gives you great ideas how you could type in, how can I expand my community? You can form new community organizations using AI.
Hmm.
It's a useful tool. But you don't want to use either of those as replacements for human connection.
So you can actually ask AI, do you know anyone with a snowblower? And or how do I find someone with a snowblower?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Yeah.
So, community is something that it takes work.
Mhm,
You have to always be thinking about it, but it becomes incredibly obvious when you don't have community, um, because you feel lonely. So what you really should do, my best bit of advice would be to start to put yourself out there, tiny steps, do small little things that get you connected to others so that later on, when you're not working, when your communities begin to dwindle in many ways, you still have a core community that is always going to be around you.
mhm. One thing I've seen is, sometimes people will stick with one community that, from the very beginning, and they just keep staying with that community, et cetera. But I guess one risk is that, as you change, as you evolve, but as times change, et cetera, um, if you're sticking with a very narrow community, then either that community may not match you at some point, or that community may not even be there um, down the road. So there's value in, if you're going to establish a community, being more extensive, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's also, everyone can have communities in multiple dimensions. You can have the community that happens to be geographically around you. You can have a community in terms of each of your different hobbies. You can have communities in terms of, maybe related to work, but
Mhm.
so some communities related to uh, aspects of the weather and things that need to be removed. So things like that, right?
Absolutely. Think of it like a pie, and
Yeah,
all the different slices are the
yeah.
different communities that you're connected with, and, you mentioned that some people have just one. That oftentimes is when people have just work as their community,
Mhm.
and then when they retire, that can be a problem for them because they feel lost without their community. They didn't get to make one beyond their work, so yeah, make that a nice big pie full of community slices.
So what are the things that tell you that you have a community versus you just have people around, or when does something actually become a community?
There isn't an exact time, but here's what I will say is that when you start to get more comfortable with each other. So, how often have you joined maybe a fitness group and then people do something outside of that fitness group?
Hmm.
You learn the last name of people, or something like that. You start to do things that go beyond what that specific little group is. Maybe you're sharing phone numbers. Maybe you're sharing a little bit more personal information. Maybe you're now starting to go out to dinner with people. Maybe you're doing a different community activity with people that is a new one. So it's really when you're moving it just beyond what you had, so that if you were to um, another way that that it's a big one, and I saw this at a senior center where someone went into the hospital and people weren't that close around the table. They used to sit around a table and somebody didn't show up, but they actually were a community without realizing it because they called the hospital, they found out where the person was, they tracked this person down, and it turned out that that was a community. I don't think they ever saw themselves as that, but they went beyond, "Oh, well, not here,"
Hmm.
to actually finding out where the person was and going to see the person.
Hmm. So there's a connectedness
Yeah.
that reflects the fact that there's a connectedness. So people realize, oh wait, someone's missing or someone's
Yeah.
not around, or what have you. If you're not, then people are like, "Hmm," and you're just like part of the furniture. They don't recognize
Yeah.
that you're missing.
Exactly.
So
It's a connection to meaningful connection.
the key is to do stuff for a while and then disappear and then see what
Yes,
happens.
and then you'll find out how meaningful your connections really are.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You just like hide, like, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Um, there you go. That's one way to test it. But,
yeah.
the thing that I don't think they realized at the table either how much that person mattered to them until that person wasn't there.
Mhm.
And so they are no different than all of us. How often do you go to activities day after day? Maybe it's the same exercise group, maybe it's a pickleball group, maybe it's a card group, maybe it's a fishing club, whatever it is.
Mm.
And then you notice the
Do you
difference.
naming clubs? Like,
Yeah.
I wanna know all the possible clubs that you could. There's
So,
rolling, there's cheese rolling clubs. There's
yeah.
also extreme ironing.
Oh, I will never join that.
Yeah,
I will stay away from that club.
yeah. Well,
So y
when you're signing up for, like, an Ironman triathlon or something, if Ironman, you wanna make sure that it's not
that it's
the
not the Iron Man.
because the other one's easy, you know,
Yeah,
run.
exactly. I would do the Iron Man fitness thing before I would do the Iron Man clothing.
So, but you were saying that, it's, before I interrupted you.
So, really, community people often don't realize how valuable the others are to them.
Mhm.
So if you find that you're in a community and you didn't even realize it's a community, you belong to groups or organizations, um, your work is a community, or anything at all, a house of worship or anything else, just now acknowledge that that's really a community for you and that you are plugged in and that they are resources that are available to you and that you would probably miss the people there if you didn't see them.
So I've seen the opposite situations too, where people are amongst a certain group of people, but then it's not really a community. They think it is, but it's not. So I think that that's important to recognize too,
Yeah.
where because I've seen situations where okay, you're part of a group and something like that, but then and you do things, but then you realize that there's no real connection
Mhm.
beyond XYZ. Like you mentioned, that can happen when people feel like they're part of a community at work, but then work can be an interesting situation where people, it's not always clear what people's motives are.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also seen situations where, and this has happened in my life too, where you hang out with people for a while, but then you realize there's not a real connection. You just happen to be hanging out because you all want to like go out partying regularly, but then you remove those things, you remove the activity, and there's not that additional connection. So I think it's also important to uh, find your communities,
Yeah.
find where people, communities are a mutual thing. It shouldn't be a situation where you're always sort of bending yourself to fit into something
Mhm.
because you wouldn't define that as a community in the same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, developmentally, we are built to start with a lot of community around us, right? All kinds of superficial connections because we're figuring out who we are.
Yeah.
And then over time, it is normal for us to shed some of those that aren't working. Shed, 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 get tighter communities that are working for you. You do not have to keep a community for your whole life. You can say, you know what, this isn't working. I've outgrown this, or I'm moving in another direction. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's just making sure that you do have communities where you do feel like you're connected. So, if a person is stagnant in a community, it's not doing anything for them, they don't feel connected, um, y you know, yeah, move on, but if you don't feel like you can do that, you're not ready to do that, you can still get another community.
Mhm.
You don't have to have just one. So, um, it is not a failure to move or to shift, to a new community. Some people think that unless you've had your same friends from early childhood, that that's not good, but that's not the case. We should all be moving on our journey through life, and we can have the communities that we need as we move through life. It doesn't have to. if you shed a community that's not working for you, there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay.
I remember a quote by Mick Jagger, um, that famous philosopher, Mick Jagger.
Yeah,
Uh,
wise sage.
yes. And, I'm butchering his quote because I don't remember verbatim, but he did say something that, like, it's unrealistic to think that you're going to hang out with the same people that you did in high school,
Mhm,
et cetera. So, I mean, there are cases where that works, where you do have, you did find someone that you really have things in common, and it's persistent and it really
mhm,
stands the test of time and great. But also, you're a different person, right? Or maybe, in high school, you didn't find your peeps, or maybe you've evolved, you have a better understanding of yourself, and you're not the same person that you
mhm.
manifested when you were in high school.
Yeah.
So, but I've seen situations where people, like, I remember someone told me that, oh, you can't make friends after college.
Oh, that's so not true. You can make community, you can make friends, you can make meaningful connections, late in life. And you and I talked about that guy who was in his 90s who made the meaningful connections with the neighbor boys who ate from the golden bowls, the ice cream, and brought their guinea pig into his house. Doesn't matter what age you are. Um, there's no judgment, there's no right or wrong with this. This is, you living your life, right? So just if you are saying to yourself, I'm looking for new community, do it. If you're really happy and satisfied with the community that you have, that's great. Stay with it.
Yeah, there are very few, um, sentences or pairs of sentences that include the word golden bowls and guinea pigs, um, back to back.
Yeah,
So,
I know. You want to say that slowly and carefully.
exactly, yes. Want to say that very quickly. Golden bowls,
And
yeah,
guinea pigs.
guinea pigs. Yeah.
So if
So,
you want to hear about that, you have to go back and listen to our conversation about that.
we won't elaborate because you have to go back and watch it.
Yeah,
It's like
that's right.
you have to watch in a previous episode, blah, 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 etcetera.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm happy to have you in my community, and I'm happy to have everybody else in our community. And I think our time is up for today, but um, I'm super glad that I have you in my community. Thanks, Bruce.
I don't have a snowblower. I don't have a snowblower, so that may change things a little bit,
Right.
but I could get one.
Oh, all right. Then that works.
So, excellent. So
Well,
we know what Debbie's criteria are
that's right.
in order
You
for
now know.
yes.
Till next time.
All right. Bye, everyone.